The text came on a Thursday morning, short and cold family meeting. Tomorrow at 3, be there. No name, no context, just a command. But I didn't need a signature to know it was from my mother. It had been exactly 1 week since I refused to sign over Grandpa Walter's estate, his business, his savings, everything he'd built over 50 years. He'd left it all to me, and the moment I said no, the silence from my family turned sharp. Clarice stopped replying to my messages. Colby unfollowed me online. Mom didn't call, but I knew it wasn't over. Ethan looked up from his coffee when he saw my face. Another message. I handed him my phone. He read it, jaw tightening. You're not going alone. I have to. You don't owe them this. No, I said. But I owe him. The next day, I pulled into the driveway of the house I grew up in. Everything looked normal. The lawn trimmed the porch clean, but something about it felt wrong. Too quiet. Too prepared. My mother opened the door before I knocked her lipstick too bright for the hour. Malin, she said, stepping aside. We've been waiting. Inside, everyone was already seated. Clarice gave me a glance sharp enough to cut glass. Zane sat stiffly at the edge of the couch, eyes down. Colby hovered near the fireplace, arms crossed. But it was the 2 men in pressed suits who made my stomach drop. This is Mr. Lark and Mr. Devon, my mother said, gesturing like she was introducing party guests. They're here to help us clarify the next steps. The man on the left opened a leather folder. We've prepared a simple agreement. I didn't sit. I didn't reach for the pen. I just looked at my mother and asked, "What kind of meeting is this exactly?" She smiled the same way she used to when she knew something I didn't, just before she used it against me. Before anyone wanted the money, they wanted the man who built it, or at least the image of him. To them, Grandpa Walter was a symbol of obligation, of expected reward. To me, he was something else entirely. I was 8, the first time he let me sit behind the counter at his flagship store, watching him count change and shake hands like every customer was family. At 10, I was labeling boxes. At 13, I was reviewing inventory sheets while other kids were at soccer practice. He never said I had to, he just left the papers near me like he already knew I'd be curious enough to care. At home, it was chaos under crystal chandeliers. Patrice rotated credit cards the way people rotated throw pillows. Colby pretended not to notice so long as there was steak in the fridge and a bottle on the bar. Rachel, back then still Clarice, learned to perform concern when it got her what she wanted. I was the quiet one, the boring one, the one who didn't ask for much. Grandpa used to say money doesn't change people. It shows you who they already were. I didn't understand that until the argument started. Screaming behind closed doors about misplaced checks, delayed transfers, ungrateful daughters. I never saw a bill get paid on time, but I saw a new designer bag on Mom's arm every other weekend. The year we were supposedly behind on the mortgage, she threw herself a birthday party with a string quartet and catered sushi. Grandpa showed up late, sat in the back, and left early. I noticed. So did she. When it came time for college, he offered to pay my tuition. But somehow, the money vanished into something urgent. Medical bills, she said. Renovations. A crisis with Rachel. I took out loans. He slipped me envelopes with small notes. Don't tell your mother. Use this for books. By the time he got sick, I had a job in finance and a growing understanding that no amount of loyalty would ever make them see me as anything but an outsider. Still, I stayed close. I listened when he vented. I helped him organize his files. And the week before he passed, when he looked me in the eye and said, "I've made my decision. Don't let them scare you out of it," I finally understood who he'd been preparing me to stand against. The air inside Mr. Holloway's office was stiff with formality. I sat across from the man who'd managed my grandfather's legal affairs for over a decade, flanked by family who suddenly felt like strangers. Clarice dabbed at dry eyes with a tissue she didn't need. Patrice wore sunglasses indoors. Zane sat quietly at the edge of the leather sofa, his shoulders tight. Mr. Holloway began with the usual formalities: donations to Grandpa's church, a small bequest to his housekeeper, an antique rifle to his childhood best friend. Clarice received a watch, Patrice a few paintings. Then came the part none of us were ready for. To my granddaughter, Malin Carter, He read I leave the remainder of my estate, including all business holdings, investment accounts, real property, and personal effects not otherwise designated. Clarice's gasp was instant. Patrice stiffened, then leaned forward. "Excuse me." "It's correct," Holloway replied. "Mr. Matthews made these changes 8 months before his passing. He was of sound mind, and it was properly witnessed." "You manipulated him," Clarice snapped at me. "You spent time alone with him for this. I didn't ask for this," I said, but it didn't matter. Patrice stood slowly, sunglasses now in her hand. "We'll challenge it." Zane still hadn't said a word. Outside, as I reached my car, Patrice followed. "This doesn't have to be ugly," she said softly. "If you transfer it all to me, I'll make sure everyone gets what they deserve." I stared at her, stunned by how fast she'd switched from furious to gentle. "I need time," I said. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Just remember, he was my father, not yours to keep." I turned the key in the ignition, trying to remember if she'd ever used the word please. It started with a voicemail from Colby. "You know this isn't what your grandfather would have wanted," he said, like he'd ever sat through a full dinner without checking his bank app. Then came a Facebook post from Clarice, vague enough to avoid legal trouble, pointed enough that people in our hometown knew exactly who she meant. Some people care more about power than family. Greed wears a nice blazer these days. I ignored it at first. Deleted messages, turned off comments, told myself it would pass. But it didn't. It escalated. Patrice's church friends started calling. One left me a voicemail quoting Proverbs. Another sent a group email about honoring one's parents with a thinly veiled note about daughters who forget where they come from. A coworker pulled me aside after lunch and said gently, "Your mom called the office." Again. My boss eventually told reception not to forward any more personal calls. I nodded in thanks, but my hands were still shaking when I went back to my desk. Clarice texted at 2 a.m. "One night, I hope you're proud." Zane won't even look Mom in the eye. 2 minutes later, another message, "You broke this family." I didn't respond. Then Zane showed up at my apartment. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, he was taller than me now, but folded into himself like someone bracing for fallout. I opened the door and stepped aside without saying a word. He sat on the couch, elbows on knees. "I don't want the money," he said quietly. "I just wanted to say that." I nodded. "I know." He looked around like the silence made him nervous. "Mom's not okay. Like she's spiraling. Clarice is fanning it. Colby's pouring drinks by 3 p.m. You should know. She's planning something. I don't know what, but she won't let this go." I swallowed the weight sitting in my chest. "Thanks for telling me." He stood halfway to the door. "I didn't say anything to them about coming here." "Smart." He turned back. "Are you okay?" I didn't answer. Not because I didn't want to, but because I wasn't sure how to explain the kind of tired that follows you even into your dreams. After he left, I sat in the dark, unread messages, still lighting up my phone. I didn't open them. I just stared at the screen and for the first time wondered if silence was starting to cost me more than speaking ever would. The call came just after midnight. I almost didn't answer when I saw Craig's name, but curiosity got the better of me. His voice slurred before he even said hello. "You think you're better than us." He muttered background noise of a television too loud behind him. "Little Miss MBA with her inheritance. Craig, it's late." "You think we didn't see this coming?" He cut in. "You think we didn't have plans?" My throat tightened. "What plans?" He laughed sharp and bitter. "The Naples house for starters. Deposit's been down since April. Colby's been dreaming about that beach view for years." "April?" I asked, stunned. "Grandpa didn't even die until June." Exactly, he snapped like I was the slow one. The man was on borrowed time. We just got a little ahead of the curve. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My hands were cold. "You're not family anymore," he added, voice hardening. "You're a barrier, and barriers get handled." He hung up. I didn't cry at first. I sat on the couch holding the phone like it might start talking again. Then, something inside me cracked open and the sobs came in waves, deep, guttural, humiliating. That's how Ethan found me. He used his spare key when I didn't respond to a single text. No questions, no judgment. He just wrapped a blanket around me and sat there, letting me fall apart. "You can't keep absorbing this alone," he said when I finally calmed down. "You need someone in your corner who knows what they're doing." The next day, he introduced me to Samantha Reed, a sharp, composed attorney with a quiet voice and eyes that missed nothing. She asked me to walk through everything: the calls, the threats, the will, the voicemail from Craig. "If they're escalating," she said calmly, "we need to assume they'll try legal action. That means you need proof, anything that shows your grandfather's intentions were sound and deliberate." I nodded, still hollowed out. "I don't have anything besides the will." Samantha leaned forward. "Then we start there. But if there's even a chance he shared more documents, letters, conversations, we'll need it. Because this isn't just about defending what you inherited. It's about protecting what he trusted you to carry forward." I looked down at my hands, remembering a photo I hadn't thought about in years. Grandpa Walter standing with his arm around another man outside the original store, both laughing like they'd just solved something big. The call came just after midnight. I almost didn't answer when I saw Craig's name, but curiosity got the better of me. His voice slurred before he even said hello. "You think you're better than us?" he muttered, background noise of a television too loud behind him. "Little Miss MBA with her inheritance. Craig, it's late." "You think we didn't see this coming?" He cut in. "You think we didn't have plans?" My throat tightened. "What plans?" He laughed, sharp and bitter. "The Naples house for starters. Deposit's been down since April. Colby's been dreaming about that beach view for years." "April?" I asked, stunned. "Grandpa didn't even die until June." "Exactly," he snapped like I was the slow one. "The man was on borrowed time. We just got a little ahead of the curve." I didn't speak. I couldn't. My hands were cold. "You're not family anymore," he added, voice hardening. "You're a barrier, and barriers get handled." He hung up. I didn't cry at first. I sat on the couch holding the phone like it might start talking again. Then something inside me cracked open, and the sobs came in waves, deep, guttural, humiliating. That's how Ethan found me. He used his spare key when I didn't respond to a single text. No questions, no judgment. He just wrapped a blanket around me and sat there letting me fall apart. "You can't keep absorbing this alone," he said when I finally calmed down. "You need someone in your corner who knows what they're doing." The next day, he introduced me to Samantha Reed, a sharp, composed attorney with a quiet voice and eyes that missed nothing. She asked me to walk through everything: the calls, the threats, the will, the voicemail from Craig. "If they're escalating," she said calmly, "we need to assume they'll try legal action. That means you need proof, anything that shows your grandfather's intentions were sound and deliberate." I nodded, still hollowed out. "I don't have anything besides the will." Samantha leaned forward. "Then we start there. But if there's even a chance he shared more documents, letters, conversations, we'll need it. Because this isn't just about defending what you inherited. It's about protecting what he trusted you to carry forward." I looked down at my hands, remembering a photo I hadn't thought about in years. Grandpa Walter standing with his arm around another man outside the original store, both laughing like they'd just solved something big. George Harmon met me at a small diner off the interstate, the kind of place Grandpa used to love. He stood when I walked in, still strong despite his age, and wrapped me in a hug that knocked the air from my chest. "You look like him," he said quietly. Around the eyes, we talked over black coffee, and when I told him what was happening, he didn't look surprised. "Walter worried about this for years," he said. "He tried everything: loans, second chances, guilt, but they never changed. That's why he left it to you. Not out of favoritism, Malin. Out of clarity." He reached into his coat and handed me a sealed envelope. My name was written in Grandpa's careful, blocky handwriting. He gave this to me months before he passed. Told me to deliver it if things got ugly. Back at my apartment, I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a letter, 3 pages written in blue ink. He wrote about the years he spent watching the family fall apart financially, the excuses, the lies, the damage. He wrote about me, about how I'd shown restraint, work ethic, and loyalty without expecting rewards. He ended with a single line that hit me harder than anything else. "You are the only one I trust not to spend what I built, but to protect it." I cried reading it, Then I pulled down the metal lockbox Grandpa had once given me for important papers. I'd never thought much of it before. Inside, tucked between insurance forms and old deeds, was a leather-bound journal. Every loan, every gift, every broken promise. Dates, amounts, notes in his handwriting. Said it was for Clarice's medical bill. Spotted her at the casino 2 days later. I scanned the pages, then picked up my phone and called Samantha. The living room was already full when I arrived. Clarice, stiff on the couch, Colby pacing Zane in the corner with his arms folded tight across his chest. 2 men I didn't recognize stood near the fireplace with folders in hand. My mother greeted me with the kind of smile that always meant danger. "These gentlemen are here to help formalize a redistribution of the estate," she said sweetly. "To keep things civil." They presented it like a compromise, 20% for me, the rest shared among the family. I didn't touch the pen they offered. Instead, I reached into my bag and laid down my own set of documents. Receipts, emails, the letter from Grandpa, a copy of the will, and a USB with Craig's drunken voicemail. I read aloud from Grandpa's journal, quoting line after line he'd written with weary honesty. Patrice shifted in her seat. Clarice flushed and looked away. "And this," I said last, "is a recording of Craig admitting you were already spending the money before Grandpa passed, including a deposit on a house in Naples." Colby swore under his breath. The room turned still. Then Zane stood. "She's telling the truth," he said, voice steady. "I've seen Mom spiral. I've seen how she talks when she thinks no one's listening. I'm done pretending this is about fairness." Clarice started to protest, but Zane shook his head. "You've all lied for years. She's the only one who never took anything." I looked at him stunned. He nodded once like he meant it. My mother opened her mouth, but Samantha walked in from the hallway before she could speak. "I'm Ms. Carter's legal counsel," she said clearly, "and I advise everyone here to reconsider their next move carefully." I turned back to the table and pushed the unsigned papers across it. Zane moved in the following week with one duffel bag and a silence I didn't press. We didn't talk much the first few days, but he unloaded boxes at the hardware office without being asked and listened carefully during meetings with Grandpa's old managers. When I handed him a set of keys to the store, he just nodded and pocketed them like it was always meant to happen. We updated the business model, slowly kept the bones modernized the rest. I watched Zane light up as he learned the inventory system, quoting something Grandpa once said about knowing your bolts like your books. He didn't call it healing, but that's what it felt like. Rachel reached out a month later, not for money, just coffee. She apologized, said she'd believed our mother's version of things too easily. I didn't forgive her outright, but I didn't shut her out either. Some bridges are worth repairing even if you walk across them slowly. With Samantha's help, I set up a foundation in Grandpa's name grants for young tradespeople with no safety net, the kind of thing he would have loved. For the first time since he died, the weight of the inheritance felt less like a burden and more like a blueprint. The message came late at night. Just one word, truce. I stared at it for a long time before replying. We met at a small cafe near the outskirts of town. She looked thinner, older, like the storm had finally slowed her down. Craig was gone. She mentioned it casually, like she was still learning how to say it out loud. Therapy, too, a few sessions in. No grand apology, no rehashing of the will. Just fragments of honesty cautiously laid on the table. "I didn't know how to stop," she admitted, eyes fixed on her coffee. "I thought if I lost control, I'd disappear." I didn't argue. I didn't comfort. I just listened. For once, it didn't feel like surrendering to her story. It felt like choosing my own. When we stood to leave, she reached out first, not for reconciliation, but for acknowledgement, and I let her hand rest briefly in mine. The last page of Grandpa's journal held only one line scribbled in his unmistakable hand. "The true measure of wealth isn't what you have, but what you do with it." I read it twice, then closed the cover gently. Zane's finishing his first year of business classes and already talking about opening a second location. Rachel volunteers twice a week at the women's shelter and brings me articles about trauma-informed finance like we're slowly learning a new language together. I said yes to Ethan last month. The ring is simple, quiet, just like the kind of life we're building. Sometimes I still feel the echo of everything we lost, but I don't carry the will like a shield anymore. I carry it like a map, because Grandpa didn't just give me his legacy, he trusted me to grow it. And now, I finally trust myself to pass it on.